There is a baby that goes out with the bathwater of this kind of unitary, with this idea that public space has a history. And that is that, I still think that the meeting of bodies in space, the most important thing that the city produces, must take place in a variety of registers, but in physical space. So to think about little parks and plazas and all this kind of traditional, Jesus, I'm glad Andre Strani is not in the room, all this kind of traditional repertoire of gathering deeply ingrained in our kind of genetic consciousness is something absolutely critical. Spines leading to the water, and it has an edge. Okay, here's another utopia. Commissioned we were by an architectural magazine to design, this was at the turn of the century, to design the retirement community of the century, which I regarded as a kind of riposte, a kind of aggressive suggestion to a boomer such as myself. I don't know about what your TIAF account, but mine is down to -0. So we'll never retire. So it was an occasion to design a little village. Again, motherhood. Cars all get left there. It's kind of clustery in terms of sub-villages. There is, however, a gigantic golf course. What is the retirement community without one? But this is a place which is not so loft-like. This is based on a housing typology, which is a row house. So here's a row of houses. They all face south. They all have greenhouses in order to heat, grow vegetables, a space of conviviality and pleasure in the sun. Each row has a living machine. This technology, very, very important bioremediation stuff, which can take your turds and produce gray water, which you can then use to water the garden or flush the toilet. Very scalable, could be done at the scale of the house, the row, the neighborhood, even the city. This is great technology. And then there were the slightly row houses. So we were much enamored in those days with this soy-derived plastic panel system that we learned about. So these were meant to be, snapped together soy panel something, highly renewable. And of course, given that it's a retirement community, there was the added advantage in using this technology that, should the Social Security check be a little bit late, you could dig into the living room. And then there is this. I began to mention the whole question of movement systems in cities. And cities are, in fact, juxtaposition engines. They are instruments for bringing people together and keeping them apart, as necessary. And the history, I will give you the 1-minute history of modern urbanism. The history of modern urbanism is about cities playing a game of catch-up with transportation systems that were designed with no thought to the kind of city they would produce. So if the 19th century city was completely deformed by the invention of the railway, the 20th century city has been completely deformed by the invention of the automobile. So why not think about this in a slightly different way? So, this is a bit of a generic bubble car, but if you were to list the criteria of a vehicle that would conduce slow movement, neighborhood concentration, a lack of demand for high-speed movement over long distances, it would have, it would be slow, it would be soft, it would be non-emitting, it would be generally friendly. It would not be fast enough to be a kind of default for taking long trips, but it would be fast enough to offer a certain level of inconvenience, to help people who are encumbered in one way or another. And of course, when I ordered the collected introductions of Eric Moss from Amazon, the robotic bubble car would arrive, as it always does, exactly at 9:43 the next morning, and with its robot claw arm, lay it on the Chippendale sideboard that lies just next to the living machine. The living room. House of the future. Again, who are we designing for? Again, urban planners are like generals, always fighting the last war. Most of the real estate product we see in, here I think Andrei Strauss could take it on the nose, is still designed with nostalgia for the hegemony of the nuclear family, which is no longer the leading category of residential life. So here's a kind of co-housing scheme. Again, same deal, a kind of doubling with a living machine. These drawings are a little sad. And now we get to Asia. So here's a city that follows on to that weed city. And again, a little anecdote. This was, I missed out on that big wave of projects in Japan when so many architects of my generation were able to engorge themselves on that particular bubble. But I finally did get invited there in the late 90s. And the first place that I visited was, what was it? The big ugly city. Osaka, yeah. So I was in Osaka. Maybe need a little more Coca-Cola, kids. So I was in Osaka, and I was being taken around by a local architect, visiting firemen, and driving down big boulevards lined with ugly concrete buildings, when we came upon an arresting sight, which was between two gigantic concrete office buildings. There was a farm. How could this be, I asked, perplexed, thinking about how real estate works in New York. I mean, the likelihood of finding a farm next door to Rockefeller Center is fairly negligible. But it seems, the Japanese have a very special reverence for self-sufficiency in agriculture, and the inheritance laws are written in such a way that a farm that remains in the family and is continually farmed is not taxed. So these anomalies, even if they're speculative, are possible. So never mind that it was a kind of fantastical idea. The idea that, even under this weird economic regime, and all economic regimes are weird, because of values, there was a kind of subsidy operation that made possible the presence of a farm next door to a skyscraper. So that sounded great to me. So we designed Eurasia, in which you can see there are a lot of farms, and they're kind of everywhere. Again, same principle as weed, that these are village-like instead of neighborhood-like, because, the majority of the growth in Asian cities, people coming in from the countryside, feel right at home here. Again, it's about difference rather than specification, but it's dimensionally precise. It's done to scale, and we're not Luddites, so there's the maglev railroad that gets you from Hanoi to Hong Kong in 11 minutes. And it's complicated, and there aren't any other ways. And here's a little round neighborhood. I love the little round neighborhood. Next to a transit stop, it's going to be accumulating certain kinds of things. See the shadows, these are a little small. I revert to the point that I didn't quite finish in talking about weed, which is, I was saying that you can figure out the lateral dimensions of a building without knowing what's going to go on there. If you want breezes to blow through and sun to penetrate from one side to the other. But if you really believe in a body-based urbanism, you can also figure out the section. You can figure out the vertical dimension. And I refer to some extensive empirical research I have done, which is to say, I have lived for 25 years on the 5th floor of a tenement walk-up building in New York City. And I can say with absolute certainty that 5 floors of stair climbing is the absolute limit for reasonably fit middle-aged Americans. So once you take this kind of valuing of human locomotion as one of the engines of urban design, things are not going to be much more than 5 stories tall. And there is going to be an edge. The city is going to stop. So then we got a commission to do an actual town in Laos. And again, it's a kind of a company town, big factory down here. But again, organized in terms of this village structure, the non-laboring members of the family would be able to grow food for themselves. There is a kind of central place along this most desirable river edge. There is